I can't help but remember it was probably my first week there. And again, not knowing much about hospice prior to that, there was a young man there, and he was mid-30s, and he had some sort of brain tumor. He definitely was eminent, but he was still ambulatory assisted. He liked to spend a lot of time out on the patio. So he liked to be outside a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I remember his social worker and brother calling and asking to speak, to the administrator. And it was, again, like my first week in there. Hey, my brother really wants to see the beach. It's kind of like that's his wish. We really need to make this happen. And if you remember that home, things didn't move super fast. So it took me a little bit of time. But I remember the social worker actually calling and kind of like pressing the button again, like, how's things going? And, I had to arrange transport and somebody to go with and all of that. And we got him to the beach, right? Probably 3:30 in the afternoon or so. And something happened that evening that I ended up back at the nursing home at about midnight. And he had just passed away.
Wow.
And it was like the weirdest nostalgic feeling to me that, like, what if we didn't get him to the beach today?
You gave him his closure.
Or
that's all he wanted to do before he left.
You're listening to Musings with Morales. Brought to you by Dialysis Education Services.
Welcome to Musings with Morales. I'm Morales here with my guest, Joe Rodriguez, a longtime friend. Actually ran into this guy in the field, in the healthcare field, and turned out to be a friend after that kind of stuck after our initial meeting. I guess it was, 2016-ish, in a skilled nursing facility that I had somehow been sold on the idea to take over and run. And pretty quickly, I think there was a friendly face there. You knew the ownership. You kind of brought a passion about what you were doing that was something that I wasn't so familiar with, but I very quickly had to get very comfortable with and actually learn how to kind of integrate with a team to work with people like you in the specialty that you were sharing at that moment. We'll get more into that side of the profession, which was actually the healthcare and the hospice profession at the time. We'll kind of catch up to where you're at today. But, welcome, Joe. I appreciate you coming out on a Wednesday.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate your time.
So, I always like to kind of start with, who the person is that we're talking with.
I'm the least interesting person in the world. I'm a kid that was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles, from a single mother. And in my upbringings, I saw a lot in life living in South Central.
Yeah.
And I was one of maybe a handful of kids that made it out of the projects. Went to a high school that was not in my neighborhood. It was actually on the opposite side of Dodger Stadium.
Okay.
So I got a different experience of life. And then ended up going to Cal Poly Pomona. And I graduated at Cal Poly Pomona. Well, I entered the school wanting to be an engineering major because I loved physics a lot. And in high school, everything was fun. But once I got to college, the math department didn't treat me so kindly.
Yeah, I bet.
And the professors were actually pretty mean, and it made me not want to do it. And so I went back to my mother. My mother said, well, discover life. Don't take too much time, but at least get an education. So I went back. I tried to figure things out. I said, I want to be a teacher. So I said, let me get my teaching credential. I majored in Spanish so I could be a middle school teacher. And I graduated. Once I graduated, about 3 of my friends that were teachers all got pink slipped.
Oh, God.
And I was like, well, what's the purpose of being a teacher if you're going to get pink slipped?
Yeah.
And so I put the credential on hold. And at the time, I was working in telecom for about throughout my college career. And I decided to stay because I was making more money in telecom than my friends were teachers. So I did telecom roughly for about 9-10 years of my life. I was very good at it. And then I had friends who were in pharma, and I loved what they did. I loved the perks. I loved the travel, but I just loved the aspect of working in healthcare. So after doing thousands of interviews with thousands of pharmaceutical companies, I finally made final interviews for one, and I didn't get picked because I didn't have pharma experience, even though they liked me a lot. They said the other candidate did.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, no problem. And then within a few weeks, there was a ad out for an end-of-life care company, healthcare. They're looking for a rep. And my friend had put a good word in for me for. And so I called the company. I bugged them for 2 weeks until they interviewed me. And they interviewed me. And then kind of life started from there. But I figured it was God's calling because it just came out of the blue, out of nowhere. After I said, you know what, I guess healthcare's not for me. I'm not passing these interviews. And it happened. So I interviewed, and I started with a company called Hospice Touch in Orange County. And, 13 years later, here I am. My expertise started being just a sales rep, an educational rep, a community educational rep, engaging with doctors, medical groups, hospitals to get them to refer patients who are terminally ill.
Yeah.
I did that for 3 years in Orange County, North Orange County and Whittier. And then I shifted over, had a wonderful opportunity to work with the same company and help them build out in Las Vegas for a year. So I went out and helped them build out in Las Vegas for a year. And that was a definitely interesting experience, and I learned a lot. Once I came back home, after that year was over, I thought about it differently. I thought I could, everything I learned in Vegas, I could really expand upon. And so I took about a year break because my mom got sick, and then eventually got back in. And once I got back in, it was a totally different animal, but I had learned so much that I applied it. And I got a wonderful opportunity to work for this really great company that I'm working for now, where I was able to give my insight and my knowledge, and it was respected and thought as a good idea. And so we grew a lot of these ideas into a very meaningful, sustainable, specialized company. And so I grew within that, and I'm now the vice president of the organization.
That's awesome.
I'm vice president of business development. But I don't really carry my VP title anywhere I go. I'm just Joe.
Yep.
I don't like swinging it around or
I
anything
think that's
like that.
what you were when I met you, weren't you? And like I said, you were one of the initial smiling faces that I met in that nursing home. How important is that? Like when you were in Orange County, where are you at now? You're like in the LA area?
I'm everywhere, but primarily in the LA area, but I am everywhere. I mean, we've expanded. When we first started with this organization, we were in the middle of LA, like La Brea area, and then we shifted over to kind of the Downey area. And then from there we covered LA, Orange County, and then we grew massively. People caught on to our good reviews, word of mouth, and our attention to detail, and just a caring organization. And then some specialized things like the programs that we have. And we went from 15 patients 8 years ago to over 230 patients.
Oh, that's a big program. That's a big program.
And encompassing a large space of land, going all the way from San Bernardino Riverside through Temecula, right? All the way up through Santa Clarita, down through Long Beach, South Bay. So covers Southern California in its majority. And it's been a good experience. It's been a humbling experience as I've gone along. I've met a lot of great people. I've seen a lot of things. And so just trying to adapt to all the changes of things that are happening.
What do you do outside of work right now?
I think the most important lesson that we all learned during pandemic is the value of time. The currency is not money, it's time. And the time you have with the people that you love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I became a father late in life, right? I was 37, 38 when I met my wife, right? Yeah, 37. And, we ended up having 3 children. I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 16-month-old.
And you're only 38 now, so how did you do that?
Botox. Yeah. And, the one thing that I like most people complained about, and I initially complained, but then I ended up seeing the value of it, and I loved it so much, was when we got stuck at home with our kids. Because I got stuck at home with my 2-year-old daughter, right? 3-year-old daughter, and my 1-year-old son.
Yeah.
And I had to still work, right? And I had to do both.
Yeah.
And it was chaotic. But it was the one span that, as a parent, when you're working, if pandemic wasn't around,
Yeah,
you wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to really like connect, right, in a very different way. And that time was the most valuable time. So after pandemic, the one thing that I told myself was, I believe in working hard, I believe in grinding, but I also believe it stops the first moment that they need your attention. And that is when you pick them up from school, right? I was notorious for always answering my phone after hours. I still do.
Yeah.
I was notorious for always working after hours. I still do. But now I do it within the constraints and limits of my children and my family.
Yeah.
Their time is everything to me. I only have from 5 to 8 o'clock, they go to bed at 8, and to give them the world.
And not forever.
And I can't complain about being tired, being sleepy, right? Whether it's homework time or my son's soccer or our YouTube videos, but spending meaningful time with them.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's an important part of development in life, right? I think my wife is very good at math, English, getting them books, following direction, where me, I'm literally about how they see the world and their interaction with it and their interaction with people. That's very important for me, right? And so, and for me, it's just my release. It's our jobs are hard enough. And everybody has a different difficulty in their job. My difficulty is dealing with emotion and people that are dying, right?
Yep.
And the chaos that goes around that.
Yep.
It can be very stressful. So sometimes the only disconnection is to really disconnect, and there's no greater joy of disconnecting than the giggles of your kids.
Hey, what's your YouTube handle again?
It's no clowning around.
No clowning around. Yes.
No clowning around
So
on YouTube.
You guys gotta check it out. If you really want to understand what Joe's talking about here, that release. You watch 30 seconds of no clowning around, and you'll get it.
Don't judge me. It's literally just.
And if anybody judges you outside of just like admiring you as a father, then we'll go get them together.
Yeah,
right?
the latest episode I was wearing a bunny outfit, so let's see how that goes. But I just try. Creative juices flowing.
Yeah.
And so it's just a good joy.
Joe,
and that's how I live my life.
Joe, your ethnic background is
Latino, Mexican. Mexican American. Both parents from Mexico, Guadalajara, Jalisco, and Sinaloa, Mexico. And I was born here in 78.
Grew up in South Central. You kind of, I think, maybe pointed out to us that there's a contrast, and kind of you is one that made it out of the area, but then you're sitting here as the VP of a reputable, large program in healthcare that's, for the people that you're serving. One by one, we want to talk more about these experiences, but they're like, they're incredible. And I never had such a good understanding of what hospice was until, we met at the time that I was running a nursing home. And it was something that I embraced as an administrator of a nursing home, because I saw just kind of a big gap on that end of things, of places to actually spend that time in an appropriate care setting.
Yeah.
Hospital is one place. Sometimes home is not the best place, or it's not a possibility.
Right.
Nursing home can be a possibility, but then there's like a lot of rules and things that, as far as spending times with families, right?
Yeah.
So, we're talking about family time, talking about kind of the contrast between what you do and needing that release. Aside from the family, I can see your arms are bigger than last time I saw you. So, like, what's the physical?
It's just the lighting.
Yeah, we got good mirrors here, right? The good gym mirrors. What's the what else is going on besides
fitness? Is a big part of my life.
Yeah.
It's the only time that I have to myself. In life, the other thing that you need is you at least need an hour or two for yourself. An hour of silence, or an hour of meditation, or 2 hours of something where it's just you. And so for me, that's working out. Literally, some type of activity. So, I work out in the mornings, right? I work as soon as I drop off my kids. I have like 45 minutes,
They're
maybe
at
an
your
hour.
pad or
No, I drop off my kids at daycare, and literally there's a gym right across the street. So I literally, as soon as I drop them off, I go work out for about 45 minutes to an hour max. I just go as hard as I can.
yeah.
And I get to basically just zone out. But that's where I do my best thinking,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes you're working, your brain is going on overload about everything that you're trying to do, and it's just work stuff. Sometimes about life stuff, but you never get to like really master plan all the things that you need to do,
Yeah.
work wise, personal wise, things with the kids.
Yep.
And so sometimes working out, you pop whatever music you like or podcast or show, and just kind of zone out for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that allows me to de-stress and allows me to kind of get composed and ready kind of for my day.
Yep.
You know, so I've been doing this since I was 25. Yeah, about 25 is when I really started taking it seriously, and hasn't stopped ever since.
I remember when we were in a conversation with the owner of the nursing home one day, and I think we were talking about box jump, and you're like, man, I'll jump as high as your shoulder or something like that. You still doing that stuff like that?
And I jumped on his desk. Yeah. Not as much. That's because during COVID, they took all those box jump mats out of the gym. So I just discovered one of the gyms, one of the 24 Hour Fitnesses has one. So I'll give it a shot again.
I didn't even realize. Is it because of the material and what it?
I don't know what they did, but during pandemic, the gyms were shut down. So like and then people started stealing weights. They started moving stuff. So a lot of the gyms gutted out a bunch of stuff that and to space people out when they were allowing them to use the gym.
Yep.
So some of those boxes were just eliminated. I showed up and like, they're not there anymore. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Joe, I don't know if you know, before I got into the nursing home, and really my steady for the last 25 years has been in the dialysis world. We've had several guests on the show, from physicians to interventionists to family members of patients, people in the industry. And one thing that we've found over and over, that when we talk about a demographic, and I think, you know, the neighborhoods that you came from are a good example of a demographic that puts barriers towards, you know, one, I guess, having behaviors that are going to keep you out of, that they're not going to get you in trouble, right? Or killed.
Right.
Or hooked on something that's going to, you know, be bad for your health.
Right.
Including, you know, things that lead to diabetes and hypertension and then eventually kidney disease, right? But time and time again, we see that a lot of people who end up with these chronic illnesses, they're faced with, like, they're totally unprepared for it when it happens. But it didn't happen overnight, right? I think with that type of chronic illness, it's super common, right? But I'm curious, like, how that translates into, like, end of life conditions, because, you know, kidney failure and diabetes progression into kidney failure, that's like a long time, right? But some people find out things that, like, man, I'm sorry to tell you, but, you know, we're thinking 30 to 90 days as far as a prognosis. So, like, can you tell me, you know, one, maybe we need a brief explanation of what hospice is.
Sure.
And then two, like, how prepared are people to have a conversation? And when you're having those conversations, like, are they blindsided by what this care environment is?
So no one in life is ever prepared to have a conversation about death, right? Death is not something that we celebrate. We don't. We celebrate birth. We don't ever celebrate death. We are scared of death. We have a fear of death. But death is inevitable, right? So the reality is that what I do is I come after the moment that they've been told that they have an irreversible disease, or a terminal disease, or a disease that's no longer treatable with aggressive medicine because the disease itself is progressing too fast. However it's explained in those 3 phases, I come after the fact. If they've been referred to hospice, right? Or even palliative for that matter. What's important to note, though, is that people actually have to get comfortable with the notion of at least being able to understand death, and that it one day will come for them. And it may be a fast one, or it may be a slow one. But no matter what, they have to be comfortable with the notion that eventually they will need care.
Yeah.
Right? People forget that. And the hardest part is the process of that. One thing is to process somebody who's passed away. The other thing is to process an impending death, knowing that somebody's going to die. That's much harder. Because you're always thinking like, how could I have avoided this? How could I delay this? How do I want to deal with this? Right? Whereas when somebody dies, they died. They died. You have to process it.
Yeah.
You have to figure that out.
Yeah.
And so that's the hard part. The reality is now that as people are dying, some people are dying a lot younger. My PCP actually pointed that out with cancer. There's a lot younger people suffering from cancer. So they're like, they move colonoscopies from 50 to 45, right?
Right.
And so because more people are dying, there's more of a need and use for hospice care. So what hospice care is, first of all, it's an end-of-life care benefit that we all have. I have it, you have it. Basically, the entire U.S. population has it as a right and a benefit. It's either going to be paid for by Medicare, if you're over 65 and over or have a disability, or by Medi-Cal, state insurance, or by private insurance. And most of our population, especially with the Affordable Care Act, is insured. So because of it, you could safely say maybe 95% of the U.S. population has insurance in one form or another, state or government or private. So because of that, they're all covered under the hospice care benefit. So as an end-of-life care benefit, it allows people to get a specialized focus of care that focuses on quality of life for however long God has given them life. And the way it works is that there's a team of disciplines that basically go out and provide that care and come to the patient wherever the patient is going to call home. It's overseen by a hospice physician that's available 24 hours a day. And then there's about 4 to 5 disciplines that'll come visit the patient at home. They'll get a nursing team, they'll get a daytime nursing team, and they'll get a nighttime nursing team. The daytime nursing team will come out and visit them 1 or 3 times a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the needs. Every time they come out, they do a full physical assessment from head to toe. They check for wounds, infections, pain, discomfort, anxiety, agitation, anything that's causing them to be uncomfortable, and to help manage that. They'll make recommendations of what to give, what not to give, and just how to better medically manage someone who is suffering so they suffer less and the family can focus on their dignity, respect, and comfort. The nighttime nursing team is there for response. So middle of the night, let's say patient is agitated or in pain or shortness of breath and the family doesn't know what to do. Instead of calling 911 and doing the same thing over and over, going back and forth from the hospital, which a lot of patients don't want to do anymore. They don't want to wait 3 hours in an ER, 5 hours, 8 hours before they get seen, right? Get poked and prodded. They can literally call a nursing triage. A nursing triage can send out a nurse to respond in the middle of the night, right? And we leave emergency comfort medications there that family can administer while we respond. We'll send out a bath aid. The second discipline that comes out is a bath aid. You know, the hardest part about hospice care is the physicality part. And so changing and bathing somebody is a very indignant part of life. And so we send out a bath aid to help change and bathe and clean the patient. They come out anywhere between 2 to 4 times a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the needs. And they also teach the family how to manage the patient, how to change and clean the patient when we're not there. There's a social worker that comes in to help with resource guidance, emotional support, and safety in the home, check safety in the home. And then for us, spiritual medicine is very important, so we also provide a chaplain or priest. So we do all these different levels of people that come in so that the family can focus literally on just the love and warmth of being there for the patient, so the patient doesn't feel alone, right? And then you add other layers like medical equipment, durable medical equipment, a fully electric hospital bed, oxygen concentrator, BiPAP machine, whatever the patient needs, right? Wheelchair, oxygen, Then we have a delivery pharmacy that delivers medications to the patients at home, all their comfort medications. So that way the family doesn't have to go to the pharmacy, right?
Yep.
And spend all that time. They can focus on stuff at home. And then incontinence supplies, diapers, chucks, wipes, gloves. So we provide all of that. But this is a benefit, right? It's not to be imposed on. When a doctor prescribes it to you, someone has to come out and explain it to you so you have a good understanding of it.
Yeah.
And then if you understand of it, you have to be evaluated for it, because not everybody can use hospice if you don't qualify for it medically. Your medical diagnosis has to state this patient has a terminal illness.
Right.
If that person does, federally, then they can benefit from hospice care and they can use their hospice benefit. And after that, it goes on for as long as it's medically necessary.
So tell me about the, when you mentioned the disciplines. So where does the, because I remember some of the patients I've worked with having like music therapy and I think there was even like aromatherapy. And pet therapy. So where does that fall in? Does that fall under the social side?
It depends. For the most part, social workers, chaplains, they tend to have different chaplains have different specialties. Like I have a chaplain that plays a guitar and sings to his patients. It's the most beautiful thing you'll see. I have another one that is very much into like scents, right? You have, we don't have it at our company, but I know there's some companies may have, someone who works for them who has volunteer dog services, petting services, right?
Yeah, that was always actually
there was a lady that used to come into the facility, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it was just for hospice, actually. I think they brought it in for the whole home. And
yes.
Like a lot of the patients really
So there's services like that sometimes happen. It's not as popular as much anymore today, like because it's more volunteer basis.
Yeah.
But I definitely, like a few weeks ago, I heard about one of our chaplains, sang a beautiful song for a patient, right? Hospice is about the meaningfulness of life, right? It isn't to cure, although there are patients that graduate. They come on our service, they start doing better because they're not being poked and prodded, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
They feel better at home.
Nature. Right?
They eat.
Nature,
they get fatter. And then they graduate.
Yeah.
And then a couple months down the line, they decline again. They call us to reevaluate.
Right.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We're not a caregiving service, so hospice can't federally be allowed to be a caregiver. So we're not there 24 hours a day physically.
Yeah.
We come and visit. But every visit is a meaningful visit, because what you're trying to do at the end of life is not make a person or a family not feel alone when they're sick. So someone who's sick should never feel alone. Families should feel supported. They should feel like they can call and pick up the phone and ask anything about, how do I give this medication? I'm watching this change in condition. What do I do here?
Yeah.
Anything that deals, because no one really knows how to deal with somebody who's dying.
Yep.
Right? Managing that. And then by doing all of these things, you're literally helping them provide the most important medicine that every human being deserves on this planet when someone is dying, which is closure. It's literally the most important medicine someone can have.
Yeah.
Because when you don't give somebody closure, for the patient or the family, particularly for whoever's going to stay around after the patient passes, it builds this poison called resentment that doesn't go away, and it just builds and gets worse in life, right? So it's a very important aspect. That's why we're called healing care. We help people heal in that form, right? Bring them closure, because it's a really important medicine. And once they do, then how many thank yous we get when somebody passes.
Yeah.
The fact that you don't have a regret or a doubt. You did everything that you needed to do to make sure that person didn't suffer on their exit out.
Yep.
Because there's two types in life when we're a kid. At the beginning, when we're a kid, and at the end. At the beginning, our parents took care of us. Yeah. And at the end, we take care of our parents.
That's right.
It's a full cycle.
Yeah.
It's a tough cycle, but it's just a natural part of life.
Yeah. So Joe, curious, end-stage renal or end-stage kidney disease, as they call it today, ESKD.
Yeah.
It's a progression or a status on kidney function that without therapy is terminal.
Correct.
So what if and I've had patients like this that there were like questions like, okay, the patient has a diagnosis of some sort of cancer. They're put on hospice because of that cancer. and then they want to continue doing
Dialysis. Okay.
experiences, like what are the challenges, what's the justifications, like any lens on that at all?
Yes. I actually became an ESRD expert in hospice because I started working with an ESRD program with one of the major health plans a long time ago. And I sat down with their chief
I think you
medical
probably
officer.
made an introduction to me at the time.
It was
actually.
it was a chief medical officer for that particular ESRD program, and he sat down and gave me a road course on dialysis patients, hospice, how they merge together, what they would like to see that's better and improve, and how it works. And what I learned, I applied, and so come full circle, patients who are on dialysis are usually are the highest utilizers in the healthcare world, right?
That's right.
They are literally 15% of utilization.
Wow, that's higher than
That's what I was told.
Medicare usually.
Everything I read
yeah.
and that I was told as of, I think the last article I read was maybe about almost a year ago. And at that time, 15% of UM was
and that's
dialysis.
out of like a small percentage of the actual the Medicare population,
Correct.
right?
Right. And it was dialysis patients. And so that being said, you're looking at patients who have multiple comorbidities, right? Pulmonary hypertension, COPD, CHF, because once your kidneys go,
Yeah.
everything else goes, right?
Well, what happened before the kidneys go as well is like if you're a type 2 diabetic, then I mean, kidney failure is one of the many.
Right.
You know, you could have like issues with circulation, your retinopathy,
Right.
so blindness, limb loss, kidney
Right.
failure, they all kind of.
So you have all these things that layer up. So at a certain point in life, probably earlier than most people, a dialysis patient is going to be sicker faster
Right.
for the most part.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point where they start developing other disease processes that are very strong. They start getting closer to end stage heart failure, closer to COPD, closer to the criterias of hospice. But one of the red flags with those patients is, and usually why I get called, is because the patient's been getting lethargic at dialysis. Their blood pressure's been dropping. Or they've been coming in and out of the hospital so much so with all these morbidities that they want to put the patient on hospice care. And so they'll want us to come out and see them. Now, for the most part, some groups don't like referring dialysis patients to hospice care because for a majority of players in hospice that are not experienced, they're going to go up to that patient and say, hey, we're here to evaluate you for hospice, or we're here for hospice care. If you want to get on hospice care, you have to stop dialysis.
Yes.
And I've never approached it that way. Because dialysis as a right, if you're not ready to stop it, you're not going to stop it, right? Even though every time you go to dialysis, you can't go 5 hours. You could do an hour, 2 hours, or when you do, literally your blood pressure drops. Or sometimes they say, no, you can't come today, right? At that moment in time, obviously a good group or a good doctor is going to have a conversation with them, or at least refer them to make an attempt at it. A good end-of-life provider, hospice provider, is going to approach that patient in a very different way, like I do. When I make the approach on those patients, I don't come with, you've been referred to hospice care, let's stop everything so we can get you on.
Yeah.
Is I have them take me through their experience in the past year, past 2 years of them going to dialysis. And what's usually they explain to me is that they're tired of going to dialysis.
Right.
They're exhausted.
Yeah.
And if the patient is not all mentally there, which happens a lot of dialysis, so to some dialysis patients, it's the family member pushing them on
Right.
to go. And there's some other subcontext behind that, right? But let's say the patient is alert and doing, I basically say, I have them explain to me that story. And once they explain to me that story, then I start asking them, how did we get to this point where the doctor mentioned hospice to you and why? And if they can explain it to me, which any good physician that referred to hospice is going to explain to them why they referred to hospice. The patient's going to say, now, do you understand why? They say, yeah. Well, look, and I tell them, most companies are going to tell you that you have to stop dialysis in order for you to come on hospice care. I'm not going to tell you that right now because I don't know what your diagnosis is. Because here's the thing, you're a Medicare patient. And by the way, this only works with Medicare patients or Medi patients. Doesn't work with Medi-Cal because you can't do dual diagnosis under Medi-Cal. Okay, so if a patient has Medicare or is Medi, right, then what will happen is Medicare allows, if the patient has an appropriate hospice diagnosis that's not related to ESRD, so if they have CHF, COPD, cancer, and it's just as provable on their decline, that can be their hospice diagnosis.
And then
they are allowed to continue dialysis. So for me, I want to do that first. So when I come and I tell them what I'm looking for exactly, they let me evaluate. They always usually do. I've never had a dialysis patient say no. They let me evaluate, and then I come back to them. And if they have a secondary diagnosis, I say, hey, look, here's what we're going to do. Here's what you qualified for. And you're going to still be able to do dialysis. But the goal is going to be that eventually you're going to probably either reduce the amount of times or stop dialysis. Because I'm sure, as it's been explained to you, eventually your body's not going to be able to tolerate dialysis anymore. Your blood pressure is going to drop. You're going to get lethargic. It's already happened before, and they usually acknowledge it.
I mean,
and so what ends up happening is that they end up getting to a mode of, okay, I can still reap this benefit while I prepare myself for what's coming. Because usually those patients are not in denial. They get it.
Yeah. Well, I would have to agree with, most patients understanding the gravity of what dialysis has been doing for them. It's the ability to stay alive and to live.
Yes.
And I kind of differentiate those two, right? Stay alive and live. And I think that's kind of like the intersect is like, when does staying alive stop living and turn into more burden and painful times, and times of agitation and anxiety. And when you think about hemodialysis specifically, the things that you mentioned are actually not they're not uncommon of somebody who's really not at the hospice stage either. Lethargy, blood pressure problems. This happens in hemodialysis. It's not easy, right? There are other modalities out there, and it's kind of like going back to the people not being prepared, right? Like, I should be seeing my doctor, hopefully, keep an eye on things, never become pre or type 2 diabetic or hypertensive if it's within my hands, right? But as things progress, like, then there's the right time, just like there's a right time to introduce palliative and hospice, there's a right time to introduce that, like, progressively you're going to end up over here, just like the approach you took. You're going to end up where you need therapy, and here are the options, right? Some of them require more preparation. Because, like, if you're going to do stuff at home, you got to learn this stuff, right? And time's ticking on learning it, right? If you're going to do it in the center, then that's not as important, right? So it all kind of makes sense to me, like what you're saying, as far as preparation or no preparation, the way it's presented to an individual, somebody who's on dialysis being able to stay on as long as they have that secondary diagnosis. And I think that's still like a palliative aspect of the care at that point, because if they're with some other diagnosis and not getting dialyzed, then that's really not it kind of manifests quickly.
Well, yeah, and I know that if somebody stops dialysis, they have 10 days, depending on whether they're basically urinating or not, right, or they're excreting their fluid, it's going to be 10 days to 2 weeks, give or take. It's pretty right.
Yeah, it's gonna, your mileage may vary.
Your mileage
based off
vary.
Of residual kidney function, how frail and fragile they already are. What other disease processes.
And it's not a painful process when they stop, but it's a scary process because you're stopping. And so what happens is, for the most part, a dialysis patient, the ones that are alert, it's a different tale. But when someone's not that alert and you have that family member doing it, those patients you usually never, ever end up taking off dialysis. Because families don't want to make that decision.
Yeah.
It's too difficult. It's too much of a strain.
My God, like, can you imagine?
And
So what's our route today to me and you? Okay, like we have children. Paco, you have children, right? Like,
5.
what's our route today? Because I always think about this. Like, my parents are still alive. I have 2 grandmothers who are still alive. I have 4 kids. I have grandkids. I have a wife. Like, imagine if shit hits the fan, health wise, which it will. Like you said, one day it will. But imagine if I didn't say what I want done, which I have. All those people, like, none of them are gonna feel the same way, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of dignity in that as well, but also it's a very responsible thing to do.
Yeah.
When we know that it's an option, right, to do advanced directives, to save our family from that battle.
Right.
I mean, you know better than me. Like, what's that like with families who are not aligned on the direction of their loved one's care at that stage of life?
Here's the thing. A doctor has to have a terminality discussion with the patient if they're alert and oriented, because they have to respect to all ethics, right? And the respect of autonomy of that patient of decision making.
Yep.
And there's also, for those patients that they're all there, but they're like, no, my daughter and she helps me make my decisions. She's my healthcare proxy, okay? That person, or when that patient's not able to make a decision, for me, whenever there's a referral for a patient, I always ask for a family discussion. Whoever's involved that comes in and out of the house, let's sit in the group together.
Yeah.
So I can have everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
Because
it's gonna happen. Those conversations
it's an
are gonna
honest
happen.
conversation. You have to have it.
Yeah.
Like, if the doctor told grandma that she was terminal, and grandma knows it, and her daughter went with grandma, and daughter knows it, but the other 8 siblings kind of don't, or kind of do, it's important that they all know.
Right.
Right? Because if you don't have everybody on the same page, there's going to be a fight of guilt and a fight of, like, let's do more. Let's do this. Because the one thing about loving people sometimes at that phase is you turn selfish. Why are you going to give up? You need to keep going. That person's like 97 and exhausted and on last leg, and has already said, I don't want to go back to the hospital. I don't want to be resuscitated. I just want to be at home, be comfortable, respect that. And their children are like, no. Let's do this treatment. Let's do that treatment. Because out of their own selfish of trying to keep that person in when that person's already lived a full life.
Yep.
Right? And that's hard. So you have to be able to have an honest conversation with people.
Yeah. I agree.
And that's what we do. So when we don't bring on people to hospice care that do not understand it. Right?
Joe, in your experience, and I had a couple of these experiences with families that thought hospice was like a bad word or like a sin, or and it was like a cultural thing for them.
Yes.
So I mean, can you speak to that at all? And, like, is it starting to change? Is hospice starting to become a more household name now? Because all the benefits that you just laid out for us, like, I'm not wishing death tomorrow, but
Sure.
like, if I were to pass, I hope I just pass, and it's that.
Sure,
that's
everybody
it,
wants
right?
to. Everybody wants to pass in their sleep.
But if I wasn't, man, you better believe, like, my family's got your number, right? Like, and we're gonna be looking for that level of care.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Yeah.
I can't speak for my entire family,
Sure.
but have you found cultures, specific type of people? Is there a stereotype of certain people?
I mean, no one embraces death, right? It's hard to. We celebrate Halloween. We have Dia de los Muertos, but nobody really celebrates, in that way. Because it's hard to celebrate. It's fear. It's end of life. What I can tell you is the word has not gone away. It still scares people. That's why people try and use palliative as a word more, or comfort care, supportive care.
Yeah.
I've had families say, don't mention hospice to her. It'll scare her. But I said, if she's alert and oriented, she has to at least hear the word once, because that's by criteria.
Yeah.
We are being referred by a doctor on an order.
For this,
they have to know what it's applied for. I had a family one time who did not want to tell the patient that she was terminal.
Oh, wow.
And they wanted us to apply hospice care, and the patient was alert. And I asked the patient, are you aware of what's happening to you? She's like, yeah. Would you like to know what's being applied to? She's like, no, leave it up to my kids. But because they didn't want to tell her that she was terminal, we couldn't apply any medications. And they wanted us to give her an IV, give her these medications, give her that. We can't.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't know. You cannot just give medications to someone who doesn't know what it's for.
Yeah.
And especially if they're alert and oriented. If she had dementia and there was a power of attorney, that's a different story. This patient is alert and oriented.
Yeah. I mean,
And you're just hiding the terminality, right?
This circumstance seems so. I mean, maybe for the people who are going to watch this episode, it might seem like, oh yeah, no, you don't do that, right? But like, I'm like thinking about these people and like what you're going through at those moments.
They wanted to be overprotective of mom and not scare her into depression.
Yeah, it's a noble gesture, but it's just not. It's not kosher, or it's just not the right way to go about it.
I mean,
right?
different cultures handle death differently. In Spanish, the word hospicio is used a lot in our industry, but that doesn't mean hospice care.
Yeah.
And so it scares, as soon as, someone Latino, first generational, hears the word hospicio,
Yep.
the first thing they think of is an orphanage or people go to die, which has some kind of, some context to it, but it means my loved one's being set somewhere to die. I don't want it.
Right. Yep.
And it's really tratamientos paliativos, right?
Yep.
So you have to explain things in a construct that is very meaningful, but it's very simple to understand. And it doesn't come from a place that, hey, I'm trying to take away something from you, or I'm trying to tell you to stop all the things that you're doing. Because at the end of the day, hospice is, you shouldn't have to give up something in life to get something else in life.
Yeah. Yep.
It should be a transition.
Agreed.
And then eventually, as you transition, there are things you're not going to use anymore or do anymore.
Yep.
There are some hard stops, like, you can't do chemotherapy, right? You can't do surgeries. You can't do any of these things. But, you shouldn't have to give up certain antibiotics if you're on an antibiotic to transition over.
Yeah.
Certain types of medications that should be okay to carry over because they're not expensive medications. They're
Right.
part of your comfort, right?
In the dialysis world, we've kind of used this term conservative management because it's not hemo, not therapy, but it's conservatively management, like palliative. management. Yeah. So I can't help but think about the place where we met. It was a pretty large, or a larger nursing home.
Yeah.
I think it was around 140 beds. And, again, like when I was introduced to this place from the ownership, it was like, hey, can you look at these financials? And like, we need some help. And okay, I'll help out. And can you just run it? Okay, you stay by my side and
That was a fun time.
Run it with you. You know what I mean? It was. I always say, like, I don't know if I have hair or not, but if I did, I lost it at
I made my career off of that nursing home. I did.
I believe it, man.
It bailed me out in so many moments when a patient was stuck at a hospital and needed to go to nursing home because they couldn't go home.
Yep.
And they had Medi-Cal, and families didn't want to go too far. It was not far from Lakewood Regional, not far from the most regional hospitals.
Yep.
And it was a nice place.
Well,
it wasn't the newest place in town. It wasn't the oldest place in town, but it was a place that, like, you come and get some care.
Yep.
Right. And with hospice care, and it worked well. It had 2 major medical groups that worked in and out of there, so it was very friendly to everybody and very familiar and accessible. And
we
I
embraced
enjoyed that.
it. We embraced it when I was there. We ended up probably 20 beds at least that were used as hospice beds, right? But I can't help but remember it was probably my first week there, and again, not knowing much about hospice prior to that, there was a young man there, and he was mid-30s, and he had some sort of brain tumor. He definitely was eminent. Even when I got there, he was eminent, but he was still ambulatory assisted. He liked to spend a lot of time out on the patio. So he liked to be outside a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I remember his social worker and brother calling and asking to speak, to the administrator. And it was, again, like my first weekend there. Hey, my brother really wants to see the beach. It's kind of like that's his wish. We really need to make this happen. And if you remember that home, things didn't move super fast. So it took me a little bit of time. But I remember the social worker actually calling and kind of like pressing the button again, like, how's things going? And, I had to arrange transport and somebody to go with and all of that. And we got him to the beach, right? Probably 3:30 in the afternoon or so. And something happened that evening that I ended up back at the nursing home at about midnight. And he had just passed away.
Wow.
And it was like the weirdest nostalgic feeling to me that, like, what if we didn't get him to the beach today?
You gave him his closure.
Or
that's all he wanted to do before he left.
I couldn't help but think that, man, that like that was just, he was waiting to kind of have his thing,
That was his grand hurrah, which what happens to anybody that's dying. That final day, everybody, a lot of patients that pass away, right? Some of them, a great extent of them, will have a day or two, usually a day, usually the day before they pass. It's like a grand awakening.
Something happened.
They kind of wake up, they're eating everything, they're calling out for people they haven't seen in a while. And the family's like, oh, they're getting better, like something happened. And then no, it's just there's kind of their way of saying goodbye.
Yeah.
And then the next day it passed. And it happens. I had one guy who, he was just like, I just want to go home. Just get me home. Can you get me home? I said, yeah, I'll get you home. He's like, can you get me home right now? I just want to go home right now. I ended up getting him home. As soon as he crossed over his door and they laid him in the bed,
Wow.
he passed away.
That's crazy, man.
He just wanted to go home and
That's
pass.
crazy. Yeah.
Right? I've had one where we were at the ER and he was going to go on care, but he kept asking for a daughter. His whole family was at bedside. We were kind of getting ready to plans to get him home. And he just kept asking for this daughter who was on her flight on her way to the ER. And she finally walked in and he goes, hi, mija. Like, hi. She said, hi, Dad. And she walked over, gave him a hug. And within like 10 minutes, he passed.
That's insane.
He just
man.
wanted to say goodbye to her.
Yeah.
And I felt the energy leave the room when that happened. And I was like, wow. And it forever changed my perspective on things.
Yeah. No, the short time that I was able to kind of be in that environment, because I've been in dialysis for a long time, and typically when I don't see a patient anymore, I find out what has happened. With the running a nursing home, it's 24 hours, so either in the morning I get endorsement or I'm there when something happened, and that was my first experience on something like that. You know? I had another patient that was on hospice in that home that really brought out kind of some unique just insight to me as well. So this patient was young, also not 30s, like mid 50s, cancer as well. Yeah, young lady, right?
Okay.
Children, and just at the point where she had turned into a grandmother. And this was one of those opportunities where being in the nursing home was the best place for this individual, because they had massive family gatherings, and we accommodated. If you remember, like the break area and stuff, and so we accommodated it. And they were, again, waiting for somebody. She was waiting for somebody from out of town. That person came in town, and that's when she chose to, as you said, the grand hurrah, or to kind of spend some time and gracefully let go. So, my experience there really brought an appreciation for hospice.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, it brought some unique experiences from the reimbursement side. It really was like night and day, company to company, as far as what sort of a relationship a nursing home had with these companies, what sort of care, the differentiation in care.
Yeah.
And I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. Like, I knew that if I was working with you, that it was going to be just a pristine ride, great communication, and that the patient was going to have a smooth transition. So I want to thank you for that introduction. We need more of it. But there's another circumstance that I'd like to bring up, because in our audience we get a lot of people who are nurses or aspiring healthcare people, right? And it's like, I had a patient that I actually went over to one of the local hospitals and was working with case management and trying to fill our nursing home, right? And this patient had, I think, like a severe form of autism, mid 50s, but also some form of severe cancer as well, and was in the home to be treated. Graduated to a point where really declining quickly, but this person was, for lack of better words, like an orphan.
Oh, wow.
Not self-responsible, a ward of the state, acutely ill, mental challenges, and declining to the point where everybody knows that it's the right time to go to hospice.
Right.
But the challenge is that they're not self-responsible.
Conservator.
So there's a whole,
And it takes a very long time.
and it was actually a bioethics committee that had to come together on this patient, right? So there were a couple physicians that were attending, an IDT. I think that was probably the bulk of it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But the person did end up graduating, or moving over into a hospice as a level of care and passing away a few months later. But do you have any experience with those type of patients that are in a environment that are not self-responsible, alert, and oriented, that are under the stewardship of the state, or some sort of conservator moving into the hospice environment?
I have, not as much as before, for a couple of different reasons. Because now everybody does bioethics, right? And when you run into usually those patients, they, for the most part, are conserved, at least the ones I ran into. And when you deal with a conservator, it's a long process, because it's usually that conservator has to go back and talk to the judge,
Right.
to change the NAR status, to make sure that they can give them this particular medication, this specific, and then they put them on hospice care, and then are they okay with, then signing consents. And that's a process. But yeah, we've run into it. It's a lot smoother now. Before, it was faster because you don't have to do bioethics. 2 doctors could sign. And that's still the notion today, although that's incorrect, right? 2 doctors can sign. And then the patient gets evaluated. There is a committee meeting, because those patients always can't go home. They have to actually go to like a nursing home environment.
Yeah.
And then the nursing home has to have their own committee meeting. And then once everybody's agreeable, then you bring them on care. But that's no longer now it's bioethics at the hospital. Once bioethics is agreeable, bioethics at the SNF. Once that's agreeable, then we can move forward. And that is extremely lengthy process.
Lengthy process.
Because there's been so many bad things that have happened in that process. That's why they made it that way.
Yeah.
I've had hospitals call and say, hey, we have this patient and they don't have this, they don't have that. And I said, have you guys had a bioethics meeting? They're like, no, not yet. I said, you have to have a bioethics meeting on that alone. And then once you have that discussion, everybody in the committee has to appoint who's going to sign the consent. And then I need your notes of your bioethics meeting stating what the conversation was. Then we can kind of figure out, right? So
Joe, you can tell me, you can decline the question.
Go ahead.
If you like, but again, back to my initial introduction. And then seeing a smiling face like yours was totally opposite of kind of like, I hear that word hospice before too, and I'm like, oh, it was a bad word to me too. To be honest, I grew to appreciate it through experience, but there are some bad actors out there. There are some bad actors out there. In regard to the way that they're applying these benefits. So, I mean, what do we need to talk about, like, in regards to the bad actors out there? Well,
I mean, there's so much. There's 2,412 hospice providers registered in Southern California.
2,412. Southern California.
Yeah. Wow. In the last 10 years, 1,500 of them registered themselves in the local county area.
Is there a moratorium on hospital?
California, 2 years ago, on March 29th, Governor Newsom had the state inspector general come out with a hospice report. After California, 6 months prior, they passed AB 664 and AB 664 and I forgot the other one, but they passed the California government passed these two mandates, and they started putting a restriction on hospices. So a moratorium on new hospice licenses was the first part. And then they started putting a couple of different restrictions. And as part of that, Governor Newsom had the state inspector general come out and do a comprehensive assessment on hospice fraud and business in California. And in Southern California in particular, but in California. And what they found was there's over 4,000 hospices in California. 2,412 are in Southern California. 1,500 of them are primarily developed in the North LA area. Glendale, Burbank, the Valley.
Okay.
And what they found was a lot of fraud rings. They found a building in Van Nuys that I think had over 180 hospices registered to one building.
Wow. Okay. All right.
And when the LA Times showed up, nobody was answering any of the doors. And then when finally somebody answered, it was a lady taking phone calls for 15 different hospices on the door.
Wow, that's crazy.
And then
how
just
many
labels and
companies
stickers.
was she taking orders?
And so
Maybe the same players, huh?
And so that was one. There was also hospices that were coming to try and do patient care, taking a patient that was 100 miles away from them.
Oh, wow.
And they were sending nursing to travel that far to see a patient, which is a no-no. There were patients that were on hospice that never should have been on hospice. There were patients that were on hospice who didn't see a nurse for like 2-3 weeks. It's not hospice care.
Yeah.
Right? They caught where there was one administrator registered to like 18 different hospices.
Oh, God.
One doctor registered to like 30 different hospices.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And so the state of California said immediately, like, this has to stop. But unfortunately, California doesn't have the manpower. So they called on Health and Human Services, the state, local, federal, and the governor's report said basically all these agencies have to create one panel, one review panel, where they basically go hospice by hospice throughout California. So after that report, there was a huge kind of expungement of hospices. So there was roughly about 400 hospices got shut down.
Well, I know there was a lot that were up for sale. It was kind of like there's a moratorium coming.
So people started selling.
Yeah.
One other restriction was a recent restriction was you could not open up a hospice and sell it immediately or a license. You had to sit on that license for at least 3 years.
Okay.
Right? And they're thinking about making it even longer.
Wow.
So that happened. The only unfortunate part is there has been some hospices that have manipulated the system enough to still open. And new articles have happened recently where they're asking, how did these hospices all of a sudden get past the moratorium? Right?
That's a trip. Yeah.
And so a lot of that's been happening. In my opinion, out of those 2,400, I only think about maybe 3% are actually good, competent providers.
Wow.
That's how bad. As much as I love what I do, that's how bad of an esteem I hold for my industry.
Yeah.
And
That's sad, man.
it is. It
sad.
absolutely is. But I've seen it. I've literally seen it firsthand. I've seen negligence. I've literally seen a hospice slide over money to a doctor in front of me at a table.
Oh, wow.
In a tele room, in a case management room at a hospital years ago, and he thought he was just making them sign, some proof that patient's on hospice care. But I literally saw the dollar bills on the little envelope, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Right. I've literally seen that. I've walked
The dark side, huh? Yeah.
I walked into a doctor's office, and the doctor's like, how much are you going to pay me for a referral?
Wow. I can say that I've had those, obviously I've had those experiences as well, running a nursing home, and it's not just on the hospice level of care, right? It's
Sure.
also with individuals within like I said, it's actors, right? It's not hospice. It's not primary care. It's individuals.
No.
We got bad actors and bad apples in every industry.
Right.
3% doesn't sound so promising. Now I need to reconsider whether I actually want hospice care when I need it.
I mean, 3% of that pie, you're still like, and I'm just talking this local area,
Yeah.
which is roughly maybe 120 providers. I think there's about 120 good hospices that cover the Southern California. They're good, competent, clinically competent, customer service competent, patient care competent providers that do a very good job. But there's a lot of bad apples.
Yeah.
And it's disappointing. And you have to navigate that. The problem is not many people know how to navigate that.
Yeah.
So for the past year, I've been a voice on LinkedIn or on my platforms,
Yep.
just voicing things that I run into, I think one time I voiced, how to, if you're, whether you're a patient, a doctor, a health plan, how are you sure that the hospice that you're dealing with is a transparent hospice? Well, rule number one, what's the address of the hospice, right? Number two, when you go to their website, does it look like a cookie cutter website? Like, look at all the hospices and look at their websites.
Yeah.
Or does it have the names of their managers? Our website does. We're fully transparent. You can see the ownership and the clinical management team immediately.
I actually had a student in the business I owned that it was crazy. Like she just disappeared on us with some equipment, VR equipment, like expensive shit, right? And so we're like looking out to contact her, and then it's like, she owns a hospice. Oh, and we call that, man, you couldn't get a hold of this hospice like for the life. Email, phone number, what? I think there was no website. It was just kind of like a name, and it was licensed. Let me ask you this. So dialysis, if I needed dialysis, or if you needed dialysis, or Paco or any of our friends, we know that there's this thing called dialysis facility compare, and it's kind of like similar to Yelp, but it's a Medicare rating, right? Is there something similar for
Care
hospice?
Compare, Medicare Care Compare.
Medicare Care Compare. So there's a hospice.
You type in on Google Medicare Care Compare, and it's going to populate a website where you can compare, and it has home health, hospice, nursing home,
and
doctor,
dialysis.
and dialysis.
Yeah. So
that's
it's the same
site,
same
website.
So you can look at hospice organizations specifically, and then they've got their
star ratings,
quality metrics,
and the family caregiver survey, which is kind of the important metric in that. You have to kind of dig in. There are hospices, like the numbers can be deceiving, but the numbers are the numbers. But the star ratings is very important. But unfortunately, like, it's a very hard grade on the star rating for a reason. And right now, the star ratings are about a year and a half behind in data.
Yeah.
And the hard part about that, if you count a year and a half back, we're exiting pandemic, so staffing shortages, all of that affected everybody. Because when those numbers came out, CMS was the first time they put hospice star ratings.
Yeah.
And our organization was one of 7 that received a 4-star and above. Out of 2,000 hospices, only 7 got a 4-star and above rating.
Crazy. That's
2
crazy.
got a 5-star, 5 got a 4-star rating. We were a 4-star.
Okay.
And then they did a re-update, and we got hit with staffing issues, which obviously caused some customer service issues, which everybody runs through.
Yep.
And we went down to 3 stars. That's still very good, right? Unfortunately, if you really look at everything in healthcare, usually regardless of where you go for really true star ratings, nobody gets more than a 3.5 anywhere for the most part.
I got to make the joke. Do you remember the star rating of the nursing home?
Yeah.
What was it?
Well, the front of it was 5.
No, man.
The front of it was 4.
The one that I ran was 1.
Oh, the one that was 1. Yeah.
It was a 1-star, man. So we got there, it was 1. I think when I left, it was 1.
Yeah.
But we made a good enough case for them to sell it, and
I've walked into a nursing home. I've walked into a few of them. It says we're a 5-star facility, and then you walk in, and you know how they have their display,
it up from
and their
19
2-star rating is 1.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm like, wait, this doesn't make any sense.
So for those of us who one day, which all of us will all meet our maker or expire one day, but if we end up in that situation where somebody we know or we ourselves need hospice, is the compare and I guess, a solid metric for me to go shopping? and
That's a good question. What I would say is Medicare Compare is a good start.
Because how am I going to find out about hospice again? Can you take us back there? So I need hospice. Who's going to tell me about
The doctor.
it? And
The doctor immediately. If you're only going to find out about hospice from your doctor, because it has to be a doctor's order.
yeah.
Doctor, nurse practitioner, your medical group. Period. No one else is gonna refer you to hospice care.
So then when they do that, do they say go find one, or do they say like
No,
do
they
this one,
well,
or
it depends. You could be, let's say you're at a hospital. At that hospital, the doctor could write an order for hospice care, a general order, and at that hospital, the case manager or social worker, whoever's in charge of case managing you, is going to, oh, the doctor wrote a general order for a hospice. Let me call some of our preferred vendors that we use.
Yep.
Right. It could also be a healthcare medical group that you work for that they have their one or two providers or their go-to provider, like we are with one of the medical groups, and they'll call that provider to come see you. Say, hey, I'm going to have somebody come and talk to you, and you go by that. Or you go into systems where, you know, they'll be like, oh, here's a list like of 10, you know, and you have every right to choose whichever one you want and go from there.
yeah.
The reality is that the more choice you give somebody when you've already discussed the terminality, the harder that choice is going to be for them to narrow down who they're going to want to choose. It's better to give, if you're going to give choices, it's good to give them 3 choices and say, hey, I'm going to give you 3 good, competent providers that we have vetted, that we normally use here. You can choose anybody else. I'm just going to give you these 3. I'd like you to interview them and see which one you feel comfortable with, that's okay with you.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way to go if you're about choice. If you work with a system that really has their go-to provider, that's okay too. If that provider is good, competent, solid, because we've been in that position before. I mean, I worked a long time, for almost 10 years with one medical group that literally referred to us most of the time directly. They didn't want to refer to anybody else because they experienced everybody else and it wasn't a good experience. So they were like, people want to deal with people that are professionals at what they do and they do it well.
So we're talking about health systems, case managers. Okay. Hey, I'm just in the hospital and I found out, you know, I'm going to fucking die, man. You know, like, I don't want to listen to you. I don't want to listen to him. You know, I want to listen to my wife.
Yeah.
Like, because she knows how to shop.
Yeah.
Right? And she knows where to find the list.
Yeah.
Is that a choice for me? Like, do I have to listen to the health plan? Do I have to listen to the doctor?
If you're a Medicare patient.
Hey, no. There's 300, or what'd you say, 2,400 other
Yeah. You have a
companies.
right of choice.
Yeah.
You always have a right. The only time you don't have a right of choice is commercial insurance, right? Because you're going to be literally blocked into whatever 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 providers that they may have.
Yeah.
Or Medi-Cal, because not everybody's going to accept your Medi-Cal IPA. The IPA may have only 2 or 3 providers. But if you're Medicare, you can choose anybody without a problem, right?
Okay.
Now, if you are part of a managed care system, if they're pretty good at it, they're already going to have some providers that they work with. If you want to really do your due diligence on who's good and who's not, you have to do a few things. Interview the provider, right? Get their name. Don't make a decision to go right there and then. Get their name, their business card. Go look up their website immediately, right? See where they're located at. Look at their Google and their Yelp reviews. If they're an established provider, it's going to be there. Go on Medicare Care Compare. You can do this on a cell phone pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Or your family member
you're
can
in
do
the
it for
office
you.
with whoever's telling you.
Yeah, your family can do that, right? And then on their website, the other thing you should look for is how transparent are they as an organization?
Yeah.
Does it say the name of the owner or the name of their management team? Does it have pictures? Does it tell you their story on their about page? To me, that's really important for any company, especially today's. If your company doesn't give me an about you, I don't want to work with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because for me, if I ever have an issue, who am I going to talk to?
Right.
Who am I going to reach out to? Right? I need to know. Do you describe your services in a way that is not cookie cutter? Like, if I go to another hospice company's website, did you copy their paragraph to put it on your page?
Well, I think,
Right?
you know, hospice is such a personal thing as well, that, like, when you talk about the transparency, knowing the people, you know, the company representing the people in the company as well, because it is so personal. Like, when I think about the organization, that you work with. I can remember some of the faces, and all great people, by the way.
Yeah.
Tell them all, give them my best, because I think some of them are still, you guys are still together, right?
Yeah.
But like I can remember you, like in the midst of everything that happened, and it goes back to like medicine being this very local, this very regional type of environment. So when you're talking about a company that a health plan is referring, like there's going to be specific actors in that relationship as well on a local level. It's almost impossible to do. I know we had the conversation earlier about a lot of consolidation and organizations getting so big in all types of healthcare that manpower, operationalizing the massive nature of it can be a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And maybe in some cases we lose that personal aspect of care when we consolidate. Dialysis went through a lot of consolidation. I think we were talking about pre-pandemic, but even before that, in 2010-ish, we had a complete change to the way we were reimbursed, and then all of a sudden, all the mom and pop shops, which just about every nephrologist out there had their own dialysis clinic, all of a sudden they sold to two big entities that today are the world's largest dialysis providers.
Right.
So, you mentioned your, I think you said your release time, or your kind of the alone time, whether it was the alone time or the time with your children. Your profession, I'm sure that you have like a very unique lens on life, which you've shared some of it with us already.
It's much simpler now, by the way.
I can imagine it is. I mean, you look at the things that are
because there's so
right?
much chaos, you got to simplify everything around you.
So with what you do and the number of people that you do it with, I'm sure there's hundreds and hundreds of stories that, it's a book in itself, each one of those stories.
Yeah.
Because that time, whether it's, a day, a week, a month, 3 months, that transition, a lot of stuff is going on.
Yeah.
A lot of emotions are happening. A lot of revelations are coming. A lot of admissions are coming. People are dealing with the end of life in different ways, whether it's the family around the individual kind of finally saying what they wanted to say all these years, or the person going through it saying what they wanted to say or what they needed to say all these years. So can you give us one story that's changed Joe Rodriguez forever, as far as your interactions in this profession, whether it's healthcare as a whole or specifically with somebody who's at end of life?
I mean, that's a good question. I run through so many scenarios, life scenarios with people, that they're all meaningful, right? The most impactful will always be my first one where I cried because the story was very similar, at the time, I just started hospice care, and I went to go training with this wonderful individual who is more seasoned, more experienced, and has been doing it longer than I have. Her name is Joy King. She's awesome. And I went out training with her, and we went out to go see a patient at a local nursing home, and the patient was there with his wife, and he was really sad and kind of crying because his 3 sons wouldn't come see him, and he was a truck driver. And I looked at that scenario and I started crying because my dad's a truck driver. He's married to his wife.
Connected. Yep.
And I have 2 brothers, 2 half brothers. So immediately, I was like, this is how could they not come see their dad? He's dying. This doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. And I started crying.
Yeah.
That impacted me right off the bat. And I've never forgotten that. And there's been a few cases that have tugged at my heartstrings, That's one of the reasons why I haven't done pediatric hospice.
Oh gosh! Oh my God! Yeah,
but I've kind of wanted to.
I don't know if you just got goosebumps. But you gave it to me, man. When you think about that end.
And it's been offered to me before in the past, but I wasn't ready for it. Now that I have children, I'm ready for it, right? Because I understand. But it's hard, right? I think that life. Everybody had one thing I have learned that has impacted me is that you don't know everybody's story.
Yeah.
And no matter how much you think you know, you don't. And so because everybody has had a different navigation to life, you can't be the hardest judge because you probably haven't lived it.
Yeah.
Right? And so because of that, I've learned to take people more at face value and learn their story and not be so judgmental of it, and just appreciate the story that I have and what I've done. I've also learned to not be resentful, because that's a poison in itself. I've learned that, I've had bad things happen to me in my life, but without them, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Right? Without them, without that job that I got fired, I wouldn't have gotten this great other opportunity.
That's right. That's right.
Without, me having this real hard heartbreak with this person, I might have never gotten, with this person. Or, I had this thing where somebody asked me, like, because I've contemplated going higher education and working in the medical field, maybe going to nursing school, right? And doing that and just adding that as an accreditation to my knowledge.
Yep.
And then somebody asked me, like, don't you wish you would have done that earlier? And I said, yeah, when I was doing my master's. But guess what? Had I done that and not my master's, I wouldn't have met my wife and I wouldn't have had my 3 beautiful kids.
That's right.
Like, I wouldn't have. My route might have gone differently, and that might have been a great life too.
Yep.
But I have a really amazing, fantastic life right now, and I wouldn't give them up for the world.
I mean, when you mentioned that to me the other day, and I got a question, but you mentioned to me about going into nursing, and I started thinking about the same thing as, like, how many lives would you have touched as a nurse, and how many lives have you touched now with where you're at? Like, there's a different way to touch people's lives, right? Like at the bedside and through a syringe, or from a different level. Like when you talk about business development, I think, like, that's the biggest opportunity to really help massive amounts of people. So I'm glad you made that choice first, and I would support you if you chose to go clinical, because you definitely got the manners.
I think in life you have to better your craft or better your person.
Yeah.
Right? If you're working for somebody or something, right, you always have to get better at your craft.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or get better at who you are.
Yep.
For the premise of being better, or for the premise of people looking at you at a certain respect level.
Yep.
Right? So I know that, like, recently, like, I've seen where organizations say, hey, you don't need a diploma to come in and interview. You don't need this, you don't need that. Those are great. That's a fantastic idea. But I also think that people should work hard to build up to something, because the journey of building up to something is what gives them their expertise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like I've been doing sales and business development and talking to people for a very long time. I'm not a social worker. I'm not a life counselor. But my hours, my 10,000, 20,000 hours of doing this has allowed me to be able to sit in front of somebody and be able to help them navigate through their life in meaningful ways. Yeah. Right?
And it only comes with that time.
And it comes with that time. Yeah. And so when you add a vocation, when you add a decree, when you add a credential, when you add something to the expertise of whatever you're working hard to do, it's a staple of significance. It's a staple that you belong there, but it's also a staple that you can be recognized there and you can work at that level. Yeah. And be above. And a lot of people, forget that. And so for me, that's what I'm thinking about doing. Yep. I mean, I have a master's already. Yep. I'm a little bit older, so school would be very hard for me, but I've thought about it, and it's something that I still think about and see what happens in life. But, always a mastery, of be a master of what you're trying to do, what you work hard every day to do.
I respect that. And I think me and Paco have had these conversations. It's something that, I've talked a lot about, is like, in your role, like, if you're not growing, you're becoming obsolete, right? But at the same time, in your role, if you're only doing what is expected, what's the thing we were talking about, Paco? Like, the extra mile doesn't cost much, or doesn't cost any extra.
No.
So I respect that you're continuing to grow in your knowledge that's going to still apply to the same thing. So I got a question about
Yeah.
the story that you told us, and,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry to get off
Sure,
and then
sure,
come
sure.
back to it, but why did the sons not want to visit their dad?
I think that was his ex-wife, and I think that, well, no, I don't think in that scenario that was his that was his girlfriend, current wife. Those sons were from a different mom,
Got you.
so they had that resentment.
Yeah, got you. Okay, so I kind of went down another road with it, but that makes much more sense.
Now I don't know what he did to his kid. I don't know the backstories of he did do something to them.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to open that. Sometimes I get a chance to pry a little bit and get an understanding, but I didn't know if he did something to them or anything. But just the overall picture of that and how that scenario was, it just was very like.
Do you have families that can't do it though? Like
That can't do what?
I can't go see my dad at the end of life. I can't. I can't see that.
No,
Like,
not
I can't see him
necessarily.
like that,
I've had families that they don't want the patient to pass away at home. I can't see them die in my home. You know, it's too painful or too scary, or for some people it's bad omens, right?
Yeah.
I had one lady who just didn't want the patient to pass away because she didn't want her. If somebody told her that her property value would decline if somebody died there, and she was trying to sell her home, and I was like, But the reality is, 81% of people go home on hospice care, at least with us. I mean, national average, I think. If I remember seeing the last number, I think it was like 74 or 75% of patients go home on hospice care, right? Home is where you pass away.
Yep.
And then the rest are assisted living, boarding care, skilled nursing facility, somewhere other than their home.
Yeah.
You have people that just are scared and just don't want to accept it.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Yeah. Well, I in the back of my head, I when you talked about the brothers or the kids
Yeah.
not wanting to go, that was kind of something I was thinking. It's like they just couldn't go. And I think that's something in myself that, like, I have a hard time facing illness of others, seeing other people ill, seeing when it comes to like my loved ones, like
Sure.
my immediate.
Sure.
I'm in healthcare, so obviously.
Sure.
But when it comes to like my people, it's like it's 10 times harder
Of course.
to muster up the strength to just be around it. But yeah, for some reason, like, in the back of my head, like I kind of, wow, when I'm there, like, is it going to be difficult for me to make that journey to go to the bedside for somebody that I love?
I think
had patients or families like that.
Yeah, and I think what I've always told them is you just got to muster it up and go. Like, this is a person that loves you or that you love, and they're at their lowest, hardest point. If you were at your lowest, hardest point, would you want to be alone? Right.
And then when you talk about like some people waiting to let go, what if that's the person they're waiting for? And they can't. Sorry, it just like it takes me down this.
I've had that scenario, and I tell people, like, go give them a hug, go tell them you love them, and just, you don't have to say a word. Just sit there next to them.
Yeah.
You don't always have to say a word, but you know what? The best medicine is not talking about the illness.
Yeah.
Everybody already knows you're sick in the room.
Yeah.
The greatest families that I've run into are the family that are all together and don't want to talk about the illness, and they're talking about everything, sports. They're just talking about normal life with this patient, no matter how sick they are, and making this patient as joyful.
Yep.
I've seen one guy was like, "Hey, I'm trying to watch the Laker game here," while I was doing a consent forms with him talking about end of life, and he's trying to watch the Laker game, and I'm watching him with him.
It really aggravated me.
Right, and then he's like, "Did you see that?" And it's all part. And I'm still talking to him. I was like, your illness, and he's like, "Yeah, I know my illness. Don't worry about it. Just don't interrupt me. I'm watching the game." Right. So like, I get it. You just want to live your life. Live your life. Give them life. It's not about feeling sorry for somebody or I'm sorry. You can pay your condolences. You can say your sorries. But the reality is, just come on in and treat them like you treated them every day.
Yeah.
And if you don't have anything that you can muster to say because it's so painful for you, then just sit down next to them and just give them company. You don't have to say a word.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters at the end of the day. It's just not making people feel alone.
Joe, we've talked a lot about the healthcare environment and specifically about what a lot of people, I'm sure, are unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
End of life care benefits, some of the, I guess, the memorable moments for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, and I thank you so much for spending so much time with us. I know you've
No
got
problem.
the time with your children.
My kids are sleeping right now, so no worries.
You know, my last question and our kind of our partying sentiment here.
Sure.
You mentioned that it's much simpler now. So what exactly was meant by that? Because I think we all could use some simplicity in our life, especially when it comes to a lens on living and eventually.
It's really easy. It's easier than you think. It's hard initially, but it's easier than you think. Put down your cell phone a little more often, because the one thing the cell phone has done is you're scrolling all the time. Even I do this sometimes. You'll be watching TV and you're still scrolling through your phone.
Yep.
There'll be a great game on, a good movie on, and you're still scrolling to your phone.
Yeah.
And I've caught myself, and I said, stop. I will sometimes be with my kids and sit down on the couch because I'm tired, and I'll be scrolling through my phone. You have to be able to put that away for a little bit. Social media is going to be endless. It's always going to be there. It's like work, right?
Yeah.
So putting the phone down more often. Putting the phone down more when I eat, when I'm with the family. If I'm by myself, I can scroll on my phone and eat.
Yeah.
But if the kids are with me and the wife is with me, putting the phone away.
Yeah.
If I don't allow them to have their tablets while they're eating, I can't have my phone. If they have their tablets, then I can have my phone. Sometimes we do that, and it's okay.
Show my little boy this episode because he
Right?
likes to have his tablet. Right
Yeah. I'm like, no tablet. Like, let's eat. Let's focus on eating, right? How was your day? What did you do? Or, you know. So that's one. Two is I've learned to, like, give myself a break from work. Like, as a manager, you're always going to get called after hours. There's things that are going to happen. Sometimes they're very stressful things. The type of work that I do, I'm sometimes at the beck and call of what my referral source is, and I need it and want to help them. That's how I built my reputation.
Yep.
But I've learned that if the work can wait until tomorrow, I'm off at 4. I'm off at 5. I'm off at 6. It can wait till tomorrow. I'm not doing anything. If it's not an emergency, I'm not answering the phone. Like, my peace is my time off. And that's what's changed in pandemic, right? People realize how much more valuable it is. And how much of that time, like, I had a friend this morning ask me, I just had a friend whose mother passed away on our care, and we were talking, and one of the things is, like, my son got sick this morning, and so from school they called me. He was crying because his stomach hurt, and I picked him up. And I took him after I gave him medicine, I took him to his grandma's house so he could feel better. And I told him about this, and he's like, "Isn't that great that you have a job that allows you to do that?" And I said, "Yeah," but I said, "It shouldn't just be my job." I said, "The reality is, if no matter what company I would ever work for in the future, if I ever did, I love the organization I'm with. I plan on ever leaving it, but if whatever organization that I would ever work for, people, entity, they're always going to know one important thing. If you need to hire me, you also need to know that I need to know that you as a company embrace, if my kid gets sick, I can leave.
Yeah, you're there.
If the school calls me about an issue, I can leave. I can go take care of these things, and it's okay. Life happens. I need a life happens company. And so if that's not included in the package, I can't work, because and unfortunately some people don't have that flexibility.
Yeah.
You know, they work for this tough boss that doesn't allow them, and life shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If my kid is crying at school, that can wait. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so that's for me simplicity, right? Being able to sometimes just cut things off so that you can focus. Obviously having your date nights with your wife, right? because you want to as much time as I give my.
Simplicity and sanity.
Simplicity and sanity, right? You gotta give love back to the people that you work so hard to make happen.
Yeah.
You can't just work. The one thing is you can't slave your life away trying to pay for all the things and do all the things as a provider and not be able to enjoy that with them.
Yeah. Yep.
I see so many people do that, men and women. They're the providers, but they work so much, they don't get to enjoy that.
Guilty right here for sure.
Right?
Like learning, like every day it's a lesson, right? And we've had 15 episodes here, and what you just said is kind of, I always ask this sort of thing at the end of the episode, right? Or throughout the episode, we get like kind of what's important, right?
Yeah.
And what I just heard, and maybe there's more than two, but it's like you are prioritizing what's important to you, which is your family, the people, your network of people that are the reason why you're out there earning a living, trying to provide.
Yeah.
There's a reason, right? There's
Yeah.
people behind that. So you're prioritizing that. And then in regard to the relationships that you have, hopefully we run across understanding and people who are aligned with us as far as like, I have a priority. I'm an asset to this company, but I can only be an asset if I can take care of these things that are.
And as you're mentally healthy,
Yeah.
When you come to work. So
Yeah.
you're also family. The simplicity is also your family needs to know that you also do need to work, right?
That's right.
Like
Yeah.
that's really important too. But it's a balance,
Yeah.
right? The simplicity is finding a good balance.
Yeah.
Sometimes one more than other, but for the most part, it just can't be just one all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what people make a mistake of.
Yeah.
Too much of one is going to defeat the other.
Right.
You need one to sustain the other, but the other one to sustain your mental health.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you do that, I think in a nutshell, that's as keeping life simple. I mean, but the other one for me that's just as important is, and this is just how I live my life, is I think integrity is really important.
Absolutely.
I think you should always be a person of your word. If you say something to somebody, follow through with it as much as you can.
Yeah.
If you can't, be as apologetic as you can be and upfront as to why you can't. Don't BS people.
It's a core value that one of my favorite, accountability, right? It's like, you shoot for it. If you fall short, you're communicating early. What is it? Bad news is best served fresh, right? Not like, let it sit for 2 months, 3 months and let somebody know, well, all your money's gone.
Right. Be kind.
Yeah.
Be respectful. Respect the differences in people. There's, whether it's culture, whether it's things, people are going to be different. People got raised differently. They did different things. They're going to be different than you. They're not worse than you. They're not better than you. They do things differently than you. Be open to that world because you're going to run into it, right? But treat people, just be a good human. You have to don't be a nice person, just be a good person.
Yeah.
Right? Nice people get walked all over,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But be a good person, be a good person to your friends, be a good person to the people you work with, be good people to the people you manage, right? Be reasonable, be real. Be direct too. Keep things as black and white as you can whenever possible. Don't BS people. I live my life a lot that way because then that way people take me at face value. Who you see, I mean, aside from a kid's YouTube show and maybe me using a cuss word every so often when I'm, in private, for the most part, I'm 100% of me all the time.
Yeah.
I don't change.
So you're not no clowning around outside of no clowning.
I'm a goofball. I can be. But like, that is important because, being your genuine self and your authentic self with people, and you treat them authentically to who they are, then it sends to the warmth of you getting to know them and building a good relationship.
Agreed.
I have people that I've known for a very long time who I probably don't talk to more than once a year or every other year. But when I talk to them, it's like we talked yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Because
No gap.
we have that understanding relationship, and that's how life, built us. But I've always treated them for face value and always treated them with respect and love, and that's important. And you give love.
Yeah.
Give love and you get love. Sometimes people are going to treat you bad. Sometimes people are not going to care about you. Sometimes people don't care about your story. That's okay.
Yeah.
They don't have to care, you know, but you have to care about you. And that's the most important thing. And you do that, you're always going to be mindful. You're going to live pretty simple, and you're going to be less stressed out.
Yeah.
And that's my goal is I don't want to be stressed out. My job is as stressful as it is at times,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
And in sales, you get knocked down all the time. Every day you're getting declined
Yep.
in one form or another.
Yep.
But you have to keep getting up.
Take notes. Everybody. Definitely great advice, Joe. I want to reflect a little bit on just kind of the discussion today. You've taught us a lot about the level of care, palliative and hospice. You've told us, enough of your story for us to admire, coming out of the projects, right? From a demographic that not many rise to the level of a VP of a large healthcare organization that can touch as many lives like this, right? Although influencers can touch a lot of lives these days, right? But it's truly, when you talk about being a good person, I think you're the example. Absolutely. I don't know if you're getting away with just being a good person only and not being a nice person, because I think you've always been a nice person in our interactions, and even in some that sometimes we had some discussions, right? Because that's how business is, right? But you always wore a smile, you always brought a positive attitude, and I can say with 100% assurity that the patients that I've worked with you with have appreciated the level of personalization that you've delivered for them. I do expect that some of our audience would be interested in connecting in the near future.
Sure.
Healthcare is changing drastically. You mentioned the high utilization among chronic kidney disease and end-stage kidney disease, and we're all going towards the same place eventually, as far as expiring from this
we all
life,
have
right?
our own path to that.
Right. But I think that the modeling of healthcare today, the understanding of access to benefits and things like this, is something that a lot of our audience would have questions for.
Yeah.
You have an open invitation with us, Joe. I think we need more people like you on the show who have real life experience, kind of ground up, but also you've got the receipts to back it up at any table, from the experience to the actual the frame paperwork, right? And maybe you're going to be adding to that in the future. So I really want to thank you for coming out on a Wednesday night,
thank you for having me.
taking the time away from the kids. Come back anytime, bro.
This episode has been brought to you by Dialysis Education Services.